I'm Member B, and in this video, we're going to talk about language registers. Language register is the level of formality with which you speak. Different situations and people call for different registers. Deciding which language register is appropriate depends on the audience, the topic, and the situation. The language you use when talking to your friends is not the same language you would use when meeting someone as important as a country's president. Registers are marked by a variety of specialist vocabulary, colloquialisms, and even the difference of intonation and pace. They are used in all forms of communication, including written, spoken, and sign. Yes, you hear it right. Even in written and sign language or form of communication, we use or apply registers. Knowing what the various registers are, how to differentiate between them, and when to use the appropriate register enhances our communication skills. There are 5 language registers. Each level has an appropriate use that is determined by different situations. Thus, the appropriate language register depends upon the audience, the topic, purpose, and location. This time, let's take a closer look at this comic strip. What do you think is unusual with the wedding vows presented in the picture? Definitely not your typical wedding vows, right? In traditional ceremonies such as weddings, we usually follow a certain procedure and words to exchange. Situations which calls for fixed and acceptable words call for frozen register. And that is the first type of register that we are going to discuss. Frozen register rarely or never changes. And because of that, this is also called static register. It is frozen in time and content, meaning it's really not going to change. And because they don't change, they sometimes include old grammar or vocabulary. They are cultural, usually related to the religions, laws, or customs of the community. They are also usually unidirectional, meaning it doesn't involve back and forth communication. Examples of frozen register include biblical verse, prayers, the preamble, the national anthem, the alma mater song, a bibliographic reference, laws, famous speeches, and so forth. So again, when we say frozen register, this type of register is fixed. It doesn't change or rarely changes. Next, we have the formal register. This language is used in formal settings and is one-way in nature. So just like a frozen register, it is also unidirectional. This use of language usually follows a commonly accepted format. It is less rigid than frozen register, but is usually impersonal. It is used in professional, academic, or legal settings where communication is expected to be respectful, uninterrupted, and restrained. Here, the speaker uses complete sentences, avoids slang, and may use technical or academic vocabulary. It is likely that the speaker will use fewer contractions, but opt instead for complete words. For example, instead of using haven't, which is a contraction, we are going to use a complete word, which is have not. A common format for this register are speeches, like sermons, rhetorical statements and questions, speeches, even a TED Talk, pronouncements made by judges, and announcements. The third type of register is called consultative register. What do we mean by consult? Yes, it means to ask for advice or opinion. So the purpose for this type of register is very specific, and that is to get help with something. Thus, we use it whenever we consult someone. People use this register often in conversation when they're speaking with someone who has specialized knowledge or who is offering advice. So the tone here is often respectful. We use courtesy titles like Mr., Madam, Professor, Doctor, but it may be more casual if the relationship is long-standing or friendly, like a family doctor. Slang is sometimes used and people may pause or interrupt one another. So unlike the frozen and formal register, this is a two-way conversation that can happen between a doctor and a patient, a lawyer talking to a client, or a teacher with her students. Next, we have the casual register. This is the register people use when they're with friends, acquaintances, or coworkers is probably the one you think of when you consider how you talk with other people, often in a group setting. It is often very relaxed and focused on just getting the information out. Use of slang, contractions, and vernacular grammar is all common, and people may use explicitives or off-color language in some settings. You use casual register in a team victory celebration or a birthday party, or when you have lunch or dinner with your friends. It is also how you talk when you text or chat with friends. The bottom line here is the language you use with your friends or peers. The last type of register is called intimate register. This register is reserved for special occasions, usually between only two people and often in private. This is used to describe language used between persons who share a close relationship or bond. This register will take into account certain terms of endearment, slangs, or expressions whose meaning is shared with a small subset of persons. For example, lovers having special terms of endearment, mothers giving pet names to their children based on some character trait, best friends formulating slangs based on some shared past experience, or an inside joke between two college friends. Now this time, let's check our understanding of these registers. I'll give a few lines or examples, and all we need to do is to determine the language register being used. Ready? Alright, here we go. Number 1. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This came from Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. The correct answer is frozen register. Why? Because this is an example of a biblical verse. Second question. Good morning. I'm Dr. De La Cruz. How are you feeling today? And the answer is consultative register. Why? Because we can assume that the speaker here, who is a doctor, Dr. De La Cruz, is talking to a patient. So this is going to be a consultation between her and the patient. Number 3. This afternoon, Imperial Senior Management Team will take you through all aspects of our business. We should have time for your questions at the end of the presentation. The correct answer for number 3 is formal register. Why? Because we can assume that this is a formal business presentation. Number 4. What's up? It's awesome that you came to visit. The language register used in this sentence is casual register. Why? Because of the use of slang and contraction. We can assume that these are two friends seeing one another. Honey, I'm home. The answer is intimate register. Because of the use of a term of endearment, which is honey. Remember, intimate register is a language between two persons who share a very close relationship. Next, Sir Carlo, what would be the best solution for this mathematical problem? The correct answer is consultative register. Why? Because the speaker used a courtesy title, Sir Carlo. So we can assume that the speaker is a student asking for an advice from his or her teacher. Next, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. The language register used in this sentence is frozen register. Okay, because this is usually what the priest says during a wedding ceremony. Next, B, I miss you. The correct answer for this number is intimate register. Again, the clue here is the use of a term of endearment or a pet name. Next, hey Sam, good to see you. What have you been up to? The correct answer for this number is casual register. We can assume that these are two friends who have seen one another. Last question. A pleasant day to each and everyone. We are gathered here today to celebrate our school's founding anniversary. The correct answer is formal register. So perhaps this is a celebration, there is a formal ceremony, and there is a speaker, okay, saying or delivering this speech. So, how many right answers did you get? I'm sure you did great. Always remember that language varies from one location to another, from one culture to another, and from one situation to another. We use different registers of language to suit different communication contexts. Now that we have discussed the different language registers, it's easier for us to determine the level of formality that a certain communicative situation needs. We can now easily know on how we are going to approach and deal with a certain person in a certain situation with a certain purpose with the correct expression and correct manner. Like for instance, you would not speak to your professor the same way you talk to your classmate. "Hey man, what's up?" you said to your classmate, but when it comes to your professor, you will say, "Good morning, sir. How's your day?" Which means that there is a proper etiquette when you're dealing with a certain person on his or her status in the society. In short, right words at the right time to the right person with the right reason.